For this video, we're going to be discussing solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So we have discussed two ways of solving quadratic equations so far. We've discussed graphing and we've discussed factoring. And factoring is a really cool, easy to use tool, and it's one that we've used before in other units, but it doesn't always work for quadratic equations. If the polynomial that we get when we're solving a quadratic is prime, then we can't use factoring. So how do we do that? How do we solve a problem like that? Well, the way we do it is by using the quadratic formula. So if I'm given a quadratic equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then the quadratic formula is this. And I'm missing part of it. It should say x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Okay, and this is one of the most famous formulas in all of mathematics, and it will give us the roots to a quadratic equation by simply plugging a, b, and c into the formula and working it out. Now you'll notice this plus or minus here. This means that I'm going to end up with two answers, one where I add and one where I subtract. So when we do this, you'll see that I end up having to do both adding and subtracting. All right, so let's look at our procedure for solving a problem using the quadratic formula. First step is to put the equation into ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then substitute a, b, and c into the quadratic formula, and then simplify. It's as easy as that. So let's take a look at example 1. Example 1 says solve using the quadratic formula, 3x squared minus 3x equals 36. So our first step is to put it into the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, which I've already done right here. So I know that 3 is a, negative 3 is b, and negative 36 is c. So I'm going to take these, and I'm simply going to plug them into the formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So I've gone ahead and done that. Just plugged all of the numbers here into the quadratic formula over here. All right, so now I simplify. Negative 3 is positive 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times positive 3 times negative 36 is positive 432. And 2 times 3 is 6. Just working my way through the order of operations here. Next, I add 9 and 432, and I get 441. All right, 441 is a perfect square. The square root of 441 is 21. So now I have 3 plus or minus 21 over 6. So now what do? Well, now I'm going to split this, because I've got a plus and a minus, into 3 plus 21 over 6 and 3 minus 21 over 6. All right, 3 plus 21 is 24. 3 minus 21 is negative 18. Divide them both by 6, and I get the answers 4 and negative 3. So there we go. Those are my answers. X equals 4, x equals negative 3. Now I can check my work by plugging these in. 3 times 4 squared minus 3 times 4 minus 36 equals 0. 3 times 4 squared is 16. 3 times 16 is 48. 48 minus 12 is 36. 36 minus 36 is 0, so that one works. Do the same thing with 3. I get 27 plus 9 minus 36. 27 plus 9 is 36, so I get 0 on both sides again, so these two work. I can also check this by using my graphing calculator. So if I go ahead and put my equation here, 3x squared minus 3x minus 36, and I graph this, we can see that I have roots at negative 3 and positive 4. So there we go. That's all we have to do, is we simply plug the numbers into this formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and just simplify it out. All right, so let's try example number 2. All right, so I need to solve this equation using the quadratic formula. So I've got 5x squared minus 13 equals 2x. Well, first thing I need to do, subtract 2x on both sides, so that I get 5x squared minus 2x minus 13 equals 0. 5 will be A, negative 2 will be B, and negative 13 will be C. Now I plug them into my quadratic formula. All right, see how I plug them in here. Simplify some things out. Negative negative 2 is positive 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 5 times 5, negative 4 times 5 times negative 13 is positive 260. And 2 times 5 is 10. Now, 4 plus 260 is 264. 264 is not a perfect square. So this is not going to result in an integer. All right. In fact, I'm not going to get an integer for any of my answers at this point. So what do I do with a square root that's not a perfect square? Well, remember back to our unit on radicals, I need to simplify that. The biggest perfect square that goes into 264 is 4. All right. So if I factor out a 4, I'm left with 66. 4 times 66 is 264. If I take the square root of 4, I get 2. So this becomes 2 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 66, all divided by 10. All right, all I did is simplify this square root like we did a couple units ago. Now you see why we had to learn that. All right, now I notice I've got 2, 2, and 10, which means that this fraction can be reduced because these are all divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 times the square root of 66 divided by 2 is just the square root of 66. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So my answer is just this, 1 plus or minus the square root of 66 over 5. Now, you could write it like this, 1 plus square root of 66 over 5, or, and then comma, 1 minus the square root of 66 over 5. As two separate answers. You could turn these into decimals. Okay, this is like 1.8 something something something, and this is negative 1.4 something something something. But I would accept this right here as an answer. When I've got an irrational square or irrational result as my answer, I would just accept this right here. So I really don't want to plug these back into my equation to check it because it's a lot of work, but I can use my graphing calculator, so let's get that back out. Okay, and I need to change this to 5x, if it'll do it, squared minus 2x minus 13. All right, graph it. Okay, you'll notice that I don't land on integers for my two roots, but if I check them, I get negative 1.42848, which is 1 minus the square root of 66 over 5, and 1.82480671, which that's 1 plus the square root of 66 over 5. So I did this correctly. My answer is simply 1 plus or minus the square root of 66 over 5. All right, so now you've seen how to use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation. So your try it problem for tonight is to solve 2x squared minus 18x plus 36 equals 0 using the quadratic formula.